Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Jaya Gopidana Vallabha Girivada Hari Jaya Gopidana Vallabha Girivada Hari Yashodanandana Brajadanarandana Yashodanandana Brajadanarandana Jamuna Tira Vanasari Jamuna Tira Vanasari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Jaya Gopidana Vallabha Girivada Hari Jaya Gopidana Vallabha Girivada Hari Yashodanandana Brajadanarandana Yashodanandana Brajadanarandana Yashodanandana Brajadanarandana Jamuna Tira Vanasari Jamuna Tira Vanasari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare Bol, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Jai Radha Madhav Radha Madhav Radhe, Jai Radha Madhav Radha Madhav Radhe, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada, Gaura Pimanandi, Jai Vishupad Paramahamsa, Pri Vrajgacharya Stotra Satta, Sri Srimad, His Divine Grace, Chalaboy Charanarvind Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki, Skandabhiti Founder Acharya Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada ki, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki, Samavata Bhakta Vrinda ki, Harinam Sankirtan ki, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Jani Thai Gaura Pimarande. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru, to Sri Gauranga, all glories to Sri Prabhupada. Om Jnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Taksurandritam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Jena Bhuttale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Juta Padakamalam Sri Gurun Vaisnavam Sya Sri Rupam Sagradatam Sahagana Ragunatam Vitam Tvam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Sri Visakanditam Scha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Taptakanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Suchidevi Pranamami Hare Priye Vansakalpa Tarubhyasya Kripa Sindhu Vyaivacha Patitanam Pavanidyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narotamam Devim Sarasatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, let us first offer respectful obeisances, which is our very means of conquest. And let us first offer respectful obeisances unto Narayana, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, unto Nara Narayana Rishi, the supremmost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the Goddess of Learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta prayesa badreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Tamasloke Bhaktir Bhavitanaistiki. By regularly hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam and by rendering a service unto the pure devotee, all that is troublesome within the heart becomes destroyed practically to nil, and loving devotional service unto the Supreme Lord, whose praise with transcendental songs becomes established as an irrevocable fact. Idam Bhagavatam Nama Puranam Brahmasamhitam Uttama Charitam Chakara Bhagavan Rishi Nishreyasaya Lokasya Dhanyam Swasyayanam Mahat. The Srimad Bhagavatam, known as the Grantaraj, the king of all Vedic literatures, is the literary incarnation of God. It is compiled by the incarnation of God, the Srila Vyasadeva. It is meant for the ultimate good of all people. It is all successful, all blissful, and all perfect. Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Sri Advaita Gadadhara, Sri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Sarabhyai Namaha. Om Sarabhyai Namaha. Om Sarabhyai Namaha. Mukam karoti vacharam pangom langayate girim yat kripa tamaham bande Sri Gurum Dinataranam. Yat kripa tamaham bande Sri Gurum Dinataranam. Hare Krishna. Welcome to our Bhagavatam class, especially our newcomers coming from Gurnagar. Gurnagar, okay. There's Gora village and Gurnagar. Yes. We are in between two Goras, and Gora Nika is here. So we're all protected. This pot, we should get new pot. This is old pot. Yeah, our pots we should keep clean. Yeah. So we are continuing to read from first canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, but chapter 5, entitled Narada's Instructions on the Srimad Bhagavatam, conversation between Narada Muni and Srila Vyasadeva. And today we're reading text number 36. 36. Oh, very important instruction coming up for Grihastas here. We have one Grihasta couple. So 36. Kurvana Yatra Karmani Bhagavat Shikshaya Sakrit Grinanti Guna Namani Krishna Syanusmaranti Krishna Krishnasya nusramanti. Okay. Krishnasya anusmaranti. Yeah. Cha kurvana yatra karmani bhagavat chikshaya sakrit grinanti gunanamani krishnasya nusmaranti cha kurvana yatra karmani bhagavat chikshaya sakrit grinanti gunanamani krishnasya nusmaranti cha kurvana yatra karmani bhagavat chikshaya sakrit grinanti gunanamani krishnasya nusmaranti cha kurvana yatra karmani bhagavat chikshaya sakrit grinanti gunanamani krishnasya nusmaranti cha kurvana yatra karmani bhagavat chikshaya sakrit grinanti gunanamani krishnasya nusmaranti cha. Okay. Kurvanaha, while performing, yatra, thereupon, karmani, duties, bhagavat, the personality of Godhead, shikshaya, by the will of, asakrit, constantly, grinanti, takes on, guna, qualities, namani, names, krishnasya, of Krishna, anusmaranti, constantly remembers, cha, and. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. While performing duties according to the order of Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one constantly remembers Him, His names, and His qualities. Everyone kindly repeat after me. While performing duties according to the order of Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one constantly remembers Him, His names, and His qualities. Purport. An expert devotee of the Lord can mold his life in such a way that while performing all kinds of duties, either for this or the next life, he can constantly remember the Lord's name, fame, qualities, etc. The order of the Lord is distinctly there in the Bhagavad Gita. One should work only for the Lord in all spheres of life. In every sphere of life, the Lord should be situated as the proprietor. According to the Vedic rites, even in the worship of some demigods like Indra, Brahma, Saraswati, and Ganesh, the system is that in all circumstances, the representation of Vishnu must be there as Yageshwara, or the controlling power of such sacrifices. It is recommended that a particular demigod be worshipped for a particular purpose, but still, the presence of Vishnu is compulsory in order to make the function proper. Apart from such Vedic duties, even in our ordinary dealings, for example, in our household affairs or in our business or profession, we must consider that the result of all activities must be given over to the Supreme Enjoyer, Lord Krishna. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord has declared himself to be the supreme enjoyer of everything, the supreme proprietor of every planet, and the supreme friend of all beings. No one else but Lord Sri Krishna can claim to be the proprietor of everything within his creation. If your devotee remembers this constantly, and in doing so, he repeats the transcendental name, fame, and qualities of the Lord, which means that he is constantly in touch with the Lord. The Lord is identical with his name, fame, etc., and therefore to be associated with his name, fame, etc., constantly means actually to associate with the Lord. The major portion of our monetary income, not less than 50%, must be spent to carry out the order of Lord Krishna. Not only should we give the profit of our earning to this cause, but we must also arrange to preach this cult of devotion to others, because that is also one of the orders of the Lord. The Lord definitely says that no one is more dear to him than one who is always engaged in the preaching work of the Lord's name and fame all over the world. The scientific discoveries of the material world can also be equally engaged in carrying out his order. He wants the message of the Bhagavad Gita to be preached amongst his devotees. It may not be so done amongst those who have no credit of austerities, charity, education, etc. Therefore, the attempt must go on to convert unwilling men to become his devotees. Lord Chaitanya has taught a very simple method in this connection. He has taught the lesson for preaching the transcendental message through singing, dancing, and refreshment. As such, 50% of our income may be spent for this purpose. In this fallen age of quarrel and dissension, if only the leading and wealthy persons of society agree to spend 50% of their income in the service of the Lord, as it is taught by Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, there is absolute certainty of converting this hell of pandemonium to the transcendental abode of the Lord. No one will disagree to partake in a function where good singing, dancing, and refreshment are administered. Everyone will attend such a function, and everyone is sure to feel individually the transcendental presence of the Lord. This alone will help the attendant associate with the Lord and thereby purify himself in spiritual realization. The only condition for successfully executing such spiritual activities is that they must be conducted under the guidance of a pure devotee who is completely free from all mundane desires, fruitive activities, and dry speculations about the nature of the Lord. No one has to discover the nature of the Lord. It is already spoken by the Lord himself in the Bhagavad Gita especially, and in all other Vedic literatures generally. We have simply to accept them in toto and abide by the orders of the Lord. That will guide us to the path of perfection. One can remain in his own position. No one has to change his position, especially in this age of variegated difficulties. The only condition is that one must give up the habit of dry speculation aimed at becoming one with the Lord. And after giving up such lofty, puffed up vanities, one may very submissively receive the orders of the Lord in the Bhagavad Gita or bhagavatam from the lips of a bona fide devotee whose qualification is mentioned above. That will make everything successful without a doubt. Translation again, while performing duties according to the order of Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one constantly remembers him, his names, and his qualities. Simple and straightforward instructions given both in the text and also the purport. So that's why it's important to understand the actual meaning of prescribed duties. There are prescribed duties. Prescribed duties means according to Shastra. Everyone has duties. No one, unless one is completely lazy, no one can be without some kind of work, some kind of activity. But the best course of action is to understand what are the recommended duties for mankind. And those are explained actually in the Shastra. And all of those duties, especially those recommended in the Shastra, their purpose is to help us remember, and by remembering, to help us reconnect or remain connected with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. So in that sense, when we understand this properly, that means that we cease to differentiate between material activities and spiritual activities, because our so-called material activities are no longer material. They are performed according to Shastra, according to what Shastra defines as prescribed duties. And the more we follow the prescription given, just like a doctor. A doctor will give a prescription. He will tell a patient what kind of medicine to take, what kind of diet to follow. So the more we follow the guidelines given by the physician, we will get, again, healthy. Uh, so similarly, all the living entities in the material world, uh, we are like patients. We are very much uh, in a unnatural, unhealthy condition because of having forgotten our connection and our relationship with the Supreme Lord, having actually forgotten our identity, having forgotten the Lord's identity, and what we are meant to do. So that's why uh, it is very important to hear from Shastra, to hear from um, Vaishnavas who are knowing about Shastra, who are following Shastra, and simply to uh, make an effort to the best of our ability to be in line with what is prescribed in terms of activities. Now it's very interesting. This is something that Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, in his Sadhana Toshani, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, as we know, he wrote very, very extensively. And there are many important instructions in one of his writings called Sadhana Toshani. And there he explains how um, you'll find this interesting, especially before a young boy reaches the age of 15. You should also find that interesting. You've already passed 15. He's getting close to 15. So Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur explains that before a young boy reaches the age of 15, and normally this is done by the brahmanas, the local brahmanas in the village. The local brahmanas, along with the other senior people in the village, elders, and also the chief of the village, the head of the village. So bringing together the Brahmana culture, Kshatriya culture, they decide on actually based on very specific and scientific process. They will decide what is the varna of an individual, and accordingly will guide him towards a particular type of education, which will in turn enable him to develop a kind of profession. We're talking here about prescribed duties. Majority of those will be within the grihastha ashram, uh, which is natural, especially in Kali Yuga. Srila Prabhupada specifically mentions in his essay of Gita Nagari that in our Gita Nagari community, we will not be encouraging people to remain brahmacharis unless they're really determined. Most people, they will enter householder life, grihastha ashram. So um, if one is fortunate to have such type of persons in the community who have this understanding and who know actually how to help, because that is generally a major dilemma for young boys. uh, you know, what am I going to do with this life? what's my future? What should I do? And sometimes it takes. Uh, I mean, one has to go through a lot of mental stress to kind of finally figure out. So in the Vedic culture, there's a process. There's a system which favors and facilitates that one, from, as I mentioned, within the age of 15, one knows by the help of such qualified senior well-wishers in the village, one will know his nature, and this will be established. There are 4 specific ways you might be interested to know if you don't already know. There are 4 specific ways by which traditionally in our Vedic culture it is established what is the nature, the quality, varna basically, of an individual. And of course, one is in connection with the family lineage. Generally, I mean, it's not the only factor, but it's one of the factors. if one is born in a, if one is born in a Brahmana family, then there are good chances, uh, although it is not automatic, but there are good chances one will have the natural tendency of also becoming Brahmana. So that is one of the 4 characteristics, knowing and understanding. Just like we come to know from Shastra, and in some places it is still practiced in India. Especially this is important when marriage, the question of marriage comes up, because then you have to, parents traditionally they would study very carefully the gotra and the family lineage of the young girl or the young boy, depending. And it used to be, it still is in some places, those who are still following traditionally, one should go back, one should have record going back 7, what do you call it? 7 generations. Yeah, that's the word I'm looking for. 7 generations. Because in some of the temples in South India, they still, that's one of the important responsibilities of brahmanas, is to keep record, okay, when, not only when somebody was born, but when such and such yajna was performed, and all kinds of details. And this is traditionally has been kept in temples by brahmanas. So that's an important criteria, which of course in Kali Yuga has become very tough, because practically no one knows, especially, majority of people outside of India are totally disconnected with the Vedic culture. But in a place like India, one can still more easily follow this kind of system. Secondly, is that one, because Brahmanas are learned, they know the science of astrology generally. So by doing the chart of an individual, one can understand the nature of someone. And then Prabhupada mentions, actually, both Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur and Srila Prabhupada mentioned the same, basically. The third is actually by doing, by giving a psychological test. Uh, we don't have such kind of tests as such, because we're not at present not following this, but by giving either a written or oral test, one can find out about an individual. I remember just a few years ago we had our Gurukul in South India, our Parasaram Gurukula, and I was giving some class on mathematics, simple mathematics, to the students. And, simple addition, 1 plus 4 plus 8 plus 9 equals to you know, and then like that. And some of the boys were very quick, and other boys like were like uh, having difficulties. So we have different natures. It's not a major problem, but we need to know, and then according to our natures, then we are meant to take up certain professions or certain activities. So one's family lineage, uh, then chart, astrological chart, uh, and what's the other one? We mentioned three. By giving psychological tests, and the fourth one is simply by observing, by observation. You can tell a lot what is the nature of an individual if he knows you're not looking. You know, usually if we know that somebody is looking or observing, we're on our best behavior. But if we are in our natural, then it's like the natural tendencies, our nature comes out. Yeah. So because this is not done today, therefore there's a lot of confusion, and people, young people, end up taking up studies or professions that they really don't have so much interest. That's one factor. The other factor, of course, is that we are not living in general. I mean, the vast majority of the population is not living, not following, not in keeping with what is prescribed in the Shastra in terms of what is meant to be the overall occupation, which is directly connected with prescribed duties. Uh, because when only when we begin to understand that Vedic culture is an agrarian culture, which means connected with cows, connected with land, mm, connected with what we call localized living, which is totally the opposite of what we experience in modern day society, then things actually uh, become more easy, more obvious. Yeah. Uh, so of course this is all very much connected with the whole what we call varnashrama dharma, which cannot be neglected, uh, which is very much part of any society or community. And the Bhagavatam and the Bhagavad Gita speak about the principles of varnashrama dharma. And without knowing this, then our lives become more difficult, more complex, more complicated. Yeah. So in other words, Krishna has arranged a simple way by which we should be living, which is agrarian in nature. Krishna lived agrarian, Vrindavan village is agrarian lifestyle. Vrindavan village in Vrindavan, all the residents, all the Brajavasis, they are simply remembering Krishna all the time. All of their activities are directly in connection with Krishna. They're remembering their main activity actually is to look after the cows. And the cows are the most dear to Krishna. So they automatically are able to remember Krishna. And therefore, um, although it may seem extremely difficult, and it is in our present context, um, society will not function properly. Individuals within society will not uh, be able to function properly unless we reintroduce this, what is meant to be the more natural way of living. Uh, So this was an important aspect that was spoken about by our founder Acharya, His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. If we want to rediscover our original spiritual nature, which is our ultimate goal, this is what is being discussed here. Our original spiritual nature is to uh, is to remember and do all activities in connection with Krishna for the pleasure of Krishna. Then we will be gradually remembering our original relationship with Krishna. Then the easiest way by which we can do this is by following the good instructions and directives that are given in the Shastra, uh, and also that are demonstrated uh, again in the Shastra, that Krishna himself, he's not only speaking the Bhagavad Gita, he's living the Bhagavad Gita. he's, you know, so to be effective, just like here we're trying to do something that will reflect these basic teachings, especially in the context of Varnasrama, where we're very far from that right now, but where every inch of soil here will be properly utilized in Krishna's service. Difficult to imagine how this place will look in 5 years from now, but you can just imagine, we were discussing the other day, a lost paradise. Who would not like to live in a paradise? I mean, Goloka Vrindavan is paradise. I mean, more than paradise. So whatever it is we are doing, we should do based on what is in Shastra. We should do for the pleasure and satisfaction of Krishna. And in this way, we become more and more Krishna conscious because we do things that are pleasing to Krishna. We attract Krishna's attention. We attract Krishna's mercy. Without Krishna's mercy, we are nowhere. We are lost. So all we have to do is hear what's being said and put it into practice. Because ultimately nothing belongs to us, isn't it? We are created by Krishna. Everything belongs to Him. Agreeing. They agree. So some comments maybe or questions on our... Okay. Yes, we were talking about you.
You were talking about how you would guide someone by observing them.
Yes.
What if the person is demonic in nature, or what if he has some kind of like some bad tendencies in his nature and like by birth? How would you guide a person like that?
In one lecture, Prabhupada was describing how every living entity who has come in the material world is demoniac because we are disconnected with Krishna. So many years ago in the Back to Godhead magazine, and I think it's one lecture also, one article was there. Who is crazy? The karmis think devotees are crazy. And of course, devotees not only think that karmis are crazy, but they know. They know that karmis are crazy. So crazy means actually demoniac. There's only two kinds of, the divine and the asuras and the suras in the Bhagavad Gita, a whole chapter. The divine and the demoniac. So pravritim cha nivritim cha janana vidur asura. If one doesn't know the difference between pravriti marga, nivriti marga, what is to be done, what is not to be done, what is dharma, what is adharma, then one is, we say demoniac means, asuric means impure in consciousness. So it's a question of degree. Prabhupada was telling the story of uh, one person had killed somebody. So naturally, he was arrested and he was brought to court. And then his lawyer was pleading that actually, my dear, my my dear Lord, uh, you kindly excuse him because he was not in his proper mind. So the judge he called upon some physician to examine him. That physician, after examining him, was called to give his testimony. And then the judge asked him, "So, what this person was sane or not sane?" And the physician he said, "My dear Lord, according to I've studied and looked at many patients in my career. According to me, everyone is more or less crazy. It's a question of degree, you know. So you have to decide according to. So it means that it's a question of everyone in the material world, because we are not knowing about our identity. It's like, in psychology or uh, psychiatry, if one is forgetting who he is, then he becomes um, what's the word? Anyways, mentally imbalanced. So all of us, to different degrees, uh, have different levels of demoniac mentality. However, fortunately, by the process given in the Shastra, just like an expert physician, he will know what kind of medicine to give. Even if you have a very severe illness, he knows the cure to that illness. So, regardless of how severe one may be, uh, the expert physician or the expert um, transcendentalist will be able to gradually bring that person to his normal condition. So your question was what to do with people who are very, demoniac? Yeah. So they will take a bit more time, and one needs to be a bit more expert in dealing with such personalities. Um, for example, we know from the Nectar Devotion, Srila Rupa Goswami explains that one who is Madhyam Adhikari, at the level of Madhyam Adhikari, he needs to differentiate between four uh, kinds of persons. I mean, he needs to know who the Lord is. He needs to know who the devotees are. He needs to know who the innocent people are. And he needs to know who the demons are, or the demoniac. And generally for the demoniac persons, we kind of keep our distance. We can give them the holy name, we can give them prasadam, and but on a one-to-one basis, dealing with demoniac persons, one has to be expert. Um, um, no one is barred to receive the mercy. That's a special feature Mahaprabhu's Sankirtan movement. Uh, there's no disqualification. Jagai and Madai were very unqualified in so many ways, but they received the mercy of Nityananda Prabhu and then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So ultimately, everyone is a devotee, isn't it? We're just covered temporarily. Some of us more covered, some of us for a longer period of time, but ultimately, everyone is uh, an eternal servant of Krishna. Simply, we have forgotten our nature, our identity. Yeah. Any? He has questions sometimes. Not so inquisitive. Okay. It will come. Should come. So we can close for now. Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki. Jai Sri Prabhupada ki. Gaura Pimanandi. Gaur Nagar. There's many people in Gaur Nagar, I heard.